At Career Growth Made Easy and CraigAnsell.com, we've got a lot going on. We're still celebrating our 50th episode. Can you believe it? 50 episodes down and 50 more to go. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, get on our email list for free giveaways, and comment on social media. Why? We're giving away 2 free resume masterclasses. They're valued at $200 each. It's a 6-part online video series that walks you through resume creation from scratch, updating, or completely redesigning and redoing your resume if you've got years of experience and your resumes maybe become cluttered or doesn't have a strong focus, or perhaps you've fallen victim to the economic downturn and need to repurpose yourself. This is a great way to do it through my Resume Masterclass. The more you interact with us, the better your chances are to win. Good luck. Also, we recently received an honor. The Career Growth Made Easy podcast appreciates being recognized as one of the top 10 resume advice podcasts in 2021. In fact, we made it to first place as ranked by FeedSpot. If you're interested, check out our social media posts, and I'll also put a link in the show notes. Plus, we're redesigning our website to make it more user-friendly, and we'll be adding some great new free content. When I started this business, it was with the goal to help as many people as I could with growth in their career journey. This includes both personal and professional growth. Besides 50-plus podcast episodes, which have some great content and tips, we'll be adding some more free downloads and guides, so stay tuned. For our 51st episode, I'm pulling out one of my favorite tips. It's called the 3 Ps. It stands for Powerfully Placed Pauses. It's most valuable to use with verbal communication, but it can be modified to work in written form as well, meaning texting and email. During my high school years, I grew up in New Jersey. I have a mixed background when it comes to music taste. Besides being exposed to rock and metal, rap music was pretty big growing up too. I know I'm dating myself, but I strongly remember Run-DMC, for example. Most of their stuff was pretty clean and harmless. I think, like many artists, they took situations, likely from their own experiences, and turned them into songs. In a way, I do that, but with podcasts. When I find myself in situations coaching or being coached and believe the information can help others, I put it out in the form of podcasts, emails, and social media. Back to rap music, and specifically back to Run-DMC. One of their tracks was titled You Talk Too Much. And one of the later verses goes a little something like this. You talk too much. 25 hours, 8 days a week. 13 months out of the year you speak. My point, we love to talk. It's a gift. It's a gift to be able to communicate. But I jokingly say it can be a curse also. Maybe you know someone that when you see them or hear their name come up, you think to yourself, they never stop talking. For starters, it's natural for us during conversations to want to engage. Just as soon as someone strikes a chord of interest with us, that it's a familiar topic to us, we typically engage or have the urge to respond. And quickly, too. Have you ever noticed that? If you're going to master my 3P rule, we need to dig into why we feel this way, this seemingly overwhelming need to interrupt the other person, if not the need to respond to them just as soon as we hear a topic of interest. It all goes back to our brains and how they function. Our brains function just like computer programs that run in the background. It might be easiest to explain if we use the concept of virus scanning or virus protection software. As you likely know, it's a program that runs in the background, continually monitoring and evaluating for threats of a virus or infection. If the software detects a concern, it will either immediately notify you with a warning or perhaps block that suspicious activity. At least we hope it does, and we hope it protects us. Our brains work in a very similar way. We're always taking in a vast array of information from our five senses. The visual probably being the most active, followed by audio. Our brains are constantly processing this information to scan for the form of threats and also previous information or experiences to tie content together. If it detects a threat, you'll likely end up in one of two situations, fight or flight mode. A simple way to explain this is to go back to our days growing up and being around the kitchen. Your parents likely told you, the stove is hot, don't touch. But maybe one day you got curious and touched it. If you got burned or nearly burned, you might have heard, "Did you learn your lesson?" So now, your experience with the stove being hot is tied to your fight or flight mechanism. If you sense heat from the stove, you'll likely back away or at least withdraw your hand because you don't want to get burned again. But did you notice? The second time was instinctual. Your brain did its part. You didn't need to be told again. You likely weren't as inquisitive as you were with your first experience, which may or may not have ended up with you getting burned or nearly burned. To clarify my point, from a single experience, in this case a hot stove, you now know how to react and react automatically. This ties back to conversations. As our brains scan information coming in, such as with conversations, as soon as it ties to one of our experiences or memories, we may feel the strong urge to share. Sometimes we might interrupt someone, jump into a conversation that we weren't directly involved in, or maybe you started a conversation because of something you became aware of. I shared a couple of stories to make it easier to get my point across. As human beings, we've been wired this way, so to speak, for hundreds, even thousands of years. Listening to an awesome podcast like this one about Craig's 3 Ps, powerfully placed pauses, won't change your programming overnight, but you can become aware of our inherent behavior and work to change it. That's the good news. For starters, in your next conversation, try not to interrupt the other person. Even if they take a deep breath or a pause, let them talk until they're finished with their thought. They may ask what your feedback was or if you had any similar experiences. At first, it'll feel a little funny to let the other person talk to what some might feel is an eternity. It might even feel awkward, but I promise you, you can get used to it. Then you'll want to work on remembering at least one key point of their conversation so you can tie back into. In fact, this is what some coaches do and do well. If you know anyone that you've purposely thought that they listened really well, this is how they did it. And maybe you could thank the 3 Ps for that. You see, they let you speak and get out what you had on your mind. You were able to empty yourself, put it all out on the table, so to speak. That in itself is not enough, though. As I said earlier, this needs to be combined with processing and identifying one or more key points that you want to recognize when you respond. No, you don't need to record the whole conversation in your head, but you should at least begin to store one or more key points that you want to respond to. If they've given you a lot of information and you almost feel overloaded, then you can go back to an earlier point they made and ask them to expand on it. For example, "That was a lot of information, and I appreciate it. Can you go back to the part about X and tell me more? I told you the 3 Ps work for written communication also." When you're creating a text or email, and especially when responding, if you feel your emotions coming on, hit the brakes. Use the 3 Ps. Take a deep breath and insert your powerfully placed pause. This can help you take out some of your emotion in your writing and keep it more factual based. In fact, one of my earliest episodes, number 3, Overloaded by Email and Text, goes into that in great deal, and it talks about this topic and how it can help you write and respond to both emails and texts more effectively. If you struggle with email overload at work, and let's face it, nearly all of us do, you don't want to miss out on episode 3. I'll put a link back in the show notes. As a contrasting point, I know one manager that does things a little differently. He asked me if I knew the greatest invention that he uses nearly every workday. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't solve it. Do you know what it was? He said, the mute button. He uses it on every work call and online meetings too. He finds it easier to vent about a situation while on mute. If that's what works for him, great. However, I prefer my 3P rule because it cuts out the need to confirm you're on mute. And also, if you're in an online video call, you'd look pretty silly yelling at the camera while on mute. I'm sure you'd get some people's attention, even if they couldn't hear you. Then you'd need to explain away your behavior. I prefer not to do that, but to each his own. I hope today's episode number 51 on my 3Ps, that's powerfully placed pauses, helps you out, whether in conversation or in writing. And remember, go back to episode 3 if you're struggling with email or text overload, because I help you with that significantly and have some really great tips to get your day back in control. Please continue to celebrate us at Career Growth Made Easy podcast and our website, craigansell.com. We're happy to hear from you on social media at LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you go back to the episode 50 posts, we're still doing our 2 free giveaways for my Resume Masterclass. Everybody should have an updated resume. Just because you have one doesn't mean it's ready for the online world. Make sure you take a look at what my Resume Masterclass offers, whether you get it through the freebie giveaway or if you're interested in purchasing. Don't let your resume be an eyesore and hold you back. You can go to rmcenroll.com today. That's rmcenroll.com today to improve your resume's appearance, its content, and stop it from being an eyesore so that you start getting noticed for the right reasons. I hope you enjoyed episode 51, Craig's 3Ps, Powerfully Placed Pauses. I will talk to you next week. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel. New episodes every Monday. In the meantime, why don't you follow us on social media at Craig Ansell on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To book a coaching appointment, download our free guides, or join our email list, check out the links in the description below.